What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy BrianDaddy coming at you with another video. Today we're going to talk about the Artisan classes, another very important pillar in the design of Ashes of Creation. This follows under their second pillar of reactive world. The Artisan classes include gathering professions, processing professions, and crafting professions. Gathering professions are fishing, herbalism, hunting, lumberjacking, and mining. Processing is alchemy, animal husbandry, cooking, farming, lumber milling, metalworking, stonemasonry, tanning, and weaving. Now the crafting professions are arcane engineering, armor smithing, carpentry, jewel cutting, leatherworking, scribing, tailoring, and weaponsmithing. Artisan classes, referred to also as artisan branches, allow a player to specialize in one or more of the three skill trees. Within each of the three artisan classes lies different professions. Characters within a single account may have different professions, so if you have alts and other things, you can grab whatever professions you want. There are profession-specific quests as well, and professions will be balanced based on testing during these alpha and beta stages. Artisan progression in each profession is per character. Progression within each profession requires the completion of certification quests. There are limits to the number of professions a character can achieve certain tiers of progression to. Artisan progression does not directly relate to progression in a character's adventuring class, but there are requirements to take into account dangers, locations, tool sets, and surveying options that are level dependent. Characters gain XP as they progress their artisan professions, but it should be expected that some artisans will have significantly higher artisan level than their adventuring level. Choice of profession does not affect the player's stats. Artisan classes and their professions are not affected by a character's religion or class, and race likely won't affect the artisan system, and certain influences instead may be housed in a background selection that isn't intrinsically tied to the race. A work order system is planned that will help players find artisans in nodes. Alrighty, that was just a little intro. Now let's talk about the contents that'll be in today's video. We're going to discuss the gathering professions, the processing professions, crafting, artisan progression, artisan gear, work orders, and the supply chain, as well as a timeline on when to expect all of these things. Gathering. Gathering is one of the artisan classes in Ashes, and many of the visible resources such as trees and ore in the open world are gatherable. This is a change from Alpha 1 where it was limited to the number of locations that had sparkles. So now they're increasing the amount of items that can be gathered, which is very awesome. We love to see that. The exact type of resource present within a resource node is not known until the node is harvested. So you don't know what exactly you're mining until you actually harvest it, which is very neat and interesting idea. As you can see here with Steven in the background mining this ruby, that he's going to get ruby, but he might not get it, might get something else as well. Gathering is intended to be accessible to both solo and group-based gatherers. Gathering requires a creation and use of tools. Gatherers who complete the gathering interaction first will gain the resources, and gathering speed can be improved by getting higher levels of artisan progression and by better gear and tools. Surveying plays a key role in helping gatherers identify resources in specific locations. Gathering within a node's zone of influence will contribute to the experience growth of that node. Certain low-level gatherables will have a tiered progression into higher tiered crafting. Gathering professions, which we've discussed earlier, are fishing, herbalism, hunting, lumberjacking, and mining. You will definitely see me out there lumberjacking every single tree I see and chopping the entire forest down, affecting everyone in the entire economy. So get ready for that dwarf to be out there chopping all the trees down. Gathering tools, also referred to as harvesting tools, artisan tools, and tool sets, enable the gathering of resources in Ashes. And each gathering profession has 3 tools, and each tool allows gathering of different types. Each profession will have quests that introduce the players to these tool sets, and the gathering tools and artisan gear have stats that affect the rates and the yields. Gatherers must meet the required certification to utilize these tools of that level or lower, and gathering tools are equipped to a character's artisan tool slot. Progression in the gathering artisan class unlocks higher harvesting tools that enable gathering of higher level resources. And artisan progression unlocks higher level surveying tools that enable better identification of gatherable resources in that location. Higher level of progression can also speed up gathering times, resource yields, and may allow access to resource at earlier growth stages. A gatherer at maximum proficiency will unlock master tool sets that will grant them access to the highest quality gatherables. Tools will have a durability and lifespan. The amount of the usages and gathering tool increases as the gatherer becomes more proficient in that gathering artisan tree. Tools may become non-repairable, requiring recrafting. Artisans will not need to rely on other trees in order to make their tools, which is a good thing. The developers are considering an introduction of gathering tools that require 2 players, such as 2-person saws that can fall larger trees. Processing. Processing is another one of the artisan classes in Ashes of Creation, and it involves the refining of raw materials obtained from gathering and item deconstruction. Each processing profession has 4 stations that unlock as a player progresses. The bulk of the time in the artisan system resides in the processing branch. The processing times vary based on the quality of those materials. Processing up to Grandmaster level can be carried out in freeholds, and processing up to Journeyman level can be carried out in nodes. There will be public spaces in nodes where processing artisans can carry out lower tier husbandry and farming activities. These professions include the alchemy, animal husbandry, cooking, farming, lumber milling, metalworking, stonemasonry, tanning, and weaving. Processing stations. These are workstations that are used to process raw materials into processed goods at nodes and freeholds. Artisan buildings are required to be placed on a freehold and node plots to unlock the placement of those stations. Each processing profession has 4 stations. Processing stations require fuel to process the required grade of materials. Players can mix and match different fuels to fulfill the requirements of that recipe. Processing stations have a queue slot that allows jobs to be queued at that station. Jobs are processed sequentially for all players in freeholds, and processing jobs in nodes are processed sequentially per player but concurrently with other players' jobs. So what it means is when you're at a node, everyone can process at the same time, but when you're at a freehold, it is a queued up system where only one player can do it at a time because they don't want players to be able to process the highest quality goods at a freehold very quickly. So it's another kind of system to combat crazy production of goods. There will also be a time-related and gameplay elements that require a player to interact with processing stations. These elements act as another throttle to the introduction of more processed goods. Processing times, yields, queue times, and job sizes can be increased based on the node progression and the upgrade of each node, of each service building. Processing stations are distinct from crafting workstations that are used to craft finished goods. The developers are considering a decay system for these stations, similar to item decay on gear. The list of processing stations are the Apprentice Crushing Station, Farms, Fishery, Freehold Farms, Metalworking Station, Mills, Novice Debarking Stations, and Stables. Crafting. Crafting is the final artisan class in Ashes. It is the driving force for the game and the economy. Crafting in Ashes of Creation is recipe-based and not RNG-based. So you will have to obtain each recipe. So I guess there's RNG for getting the recipe, but not actually when you are crafting. Crafting stations are located on freeholds within nodes, and the higher tier ones are unlocked with node progression. Players can only craft up to Journeyman on freeholds, but top tier crafting stations are present at all node types. However, scientific nodes offer additional bonuses to crafting performed there. Artisan gear will enable crafting of stronger items, and crafting items may vary between professions, but the bulk of the time spent in the artisan system resides in the processing branch. Not every crafting profession is able to craft consumables. The developers are seeking feedback on the addition of a gameplay layer to crafting that determines an outcome based on the player's performance. The developers are debating whether this occurs on a craft-by-craft basis or a one-off basis after a new level of certification has been achieved. This will be revealed when it is ready to be showcased. There will not be a labor or energy system in Ashes of Creation, so that is a good thing. And these crafting professions include the arcane engineering, armor smithing, carpentry, jewel cutting, leatherworking, scribing, tailoring, and weaponsmithing. Recipes. Recipes that are obtained must be committed to a player's recipe book by right-clicking on that. This consumes the recipe and unlocks the ability to craft the item. Artisans must have the required certification to learn the recipes of that level, and recipes can be traded or sold prior to them being committed to your book. In most cases, learned recipes are permanently added to that character's book, but in certain unique cases there will be a charge count on that, where you can have a number of uses for that recipe. And once that recipe is learned, it cannot be shared with other characters, including your alts. Recipes have slots for required and selectable crafting material. Adding higher rarity selectable materials increases the rarity of the crafted item. Choosing different selectable materials can also result in crafted items with different stat blocks and unique properties. Recipes may have an XP component where crafting that recipe multiple times can level up the recipe and unlock better results. While selectable materials offer a wide degree of customization, crafting results must lie broadly within the realms of the recipe's definition, and so cannot be arbitrarily customized. Crafting stations, also referred to as crafting benches or workstations, located on freeholds within nodes. Different tiers of crafting stations represent the quality of the items that can be crafted. Higher tier crafting stations are unlocked with the node progression. City Stage 5 nodes can have 1 Grandmaster, and Metropolis Stage 6 nodes can have 2 Grandmaster crafting stations. Players can only craft up to Journeyman level on freeholds. So again, processing happens at freeholds and the crafting happens at nodes. They're trying to keep the world, the highest level stuff at your freeholds, the highest level stuff at your nodes, working together, not having to just do everything at one spot, making you actually interact with the world. And the list of crafting stations include armor smithing, hide works, laboratories, ship workstations, smithies, stoneworks, textile mills, weaponsmithing stations, and wood shops. Artisan progression occurs based on experience as well as achievements of certain benchmarks within the branch. So as you unlock and do recipes and abilities and you keep using your profession, you're going to keep unlocking more and more abilities. Artisans start off as novices in all professions, and the progression of each tier within a profession grants skill points that can be utilized in a character's tree. The certification quests must be completed to gain proficiency in that tier, and completing these unlocks the benefits of the profession, such as tools and gathering and recipes for crafting professions. There are limits to the number of professions at each certification tier across 3 artisan branches. For example, a character may only ever master in up to 3 professions and grandmaster in 2 professions across all of the branches. So you can only become a grandmaster in 2 things out of all those branches. So that's something you have to keep in mind and partner with your friends in guild on who's going to be a grandmaster in what, because it's going to be very hard to obtain those things, and you want to build a community and work together. That's what it's all about. So Artisan Mastery is no longer restricted to a single branch, and characters may change which professions they master. Masteries aren't just about making an item, but they grant many things, including titles, access to items, bargains, and quests. Artisan Gear. Artisan Gear boosts them in their gathering, processing, and crafting professions. Profession NPCs sell lower level Artisan Gear, and higher level gear is crafted by the players. There are 3 Artisan Gear slots on a character's paper doll. Previously, they were referred to as undergarment slots, but Artisan Gear and Adventuring Gear do not need to be swapped for either to be effective when they are equipped on the character. But players will be able to toggle the visibility between Adventuring Gear and Artisan Gear. So essentially, you get to wear both, and you'll gain the benefits of it, and you can toggle what you want the players to see. So if you wanted to go out and do some mining, but make it seem like you weren't, you could just toggle and have that you have your Adventuring Gear on. So it's very interesting, very cool. Work orders. A work order system is planned that will help players find artisans in nodes. In the artisan supply chain, artisans within Ashes must choose a path in their skill tree. This interdependency establishes a supply chain from raw materials to finished product. Each stage of the chain may require caravans to transport goods from one artisan to another. First, you will obtain the raw materials, use the gathering profession by killing mobs and bosses, from deconstructing weapons or armor, or by purchasing them from players. And then step 2, you refine those raw materials with the processing perfection. Step 3, you'll craft the finished product using crafting recipes, and the recipes are also obtained from boss drops. The timeline for artisan classes being present is expected to become fully online in Alpha 2, and we will be testing and making sure that all these things work and are fun to play. Alrighty, ladies and gents, thank you guys for tuning in for another video. I appreciate you. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.